There was a loaf of bread on a table in 1955. It was made of flour and water and yeast and salt. A man could say the whole recipe out loud before the bread was cut. He could say it to a child, and the child would understand every word. Take that same loaf down off the shelf now. Turn it over. Read the back of it. You will not get through it in one breath. You will not get through it in one sentence. There are words on there that were invented in a laboratory by men in coats for reasons that have nothing to do with feeding you and everything to do with the truck it rode in on and the warehouse it sat in the 90 days it had to last before anybody bought it. The bread did not get better. The bread got cheaper to make and longer to sell. Those are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing. Somebody decided a long time ago that you would not be able to tell the difference, and for 70 years, they were right. I want to take something off the table before we start, because it is the thing they want you to argue about. Nobody poisoned you on purpose. There is no man in a chair stroking a cat. There was no meeting where they decided to make you sick. If you go looking for that man, you will not find him. And while you are looking for him, the actual thing will happen again, the way it has happened every year of your life. Here's what happened instead. It is worse because it is ordinary. Somebody looked at a number. The number was the cost of an ingredient. There was a cheaper ingredient that did the same job, held the shelf, carried the sweet, kept the color, and the cheaper one shaved a fraction of a cent off every unit. Multiply a fraction of a cent by 1 billion units. That is the whole story. That is the engine. The poison was not the goal. The poison was a rounding error that landed in somebody's favor. And the somebody was old. Hold on to that. We will come back to it. The somebody was already old and already comfortable, and the cheapest thing in the room was always going to be the people who hadn't been born yet. That's us. We were the rounding error. Start with the sweetener, because it is the cleanest example anyone ever built. For most of the century, when something was sweet with the sugar, cane, and beet. You know what it is. Your grandmother knew what it is. Then two simple things happened, and neither of them happened in a kitchen. They happened in Washington. The first thing, the government decided to protect American sugar. Tariffs on the sugar that came from outside. Quotas. Price supports going back to a law from 1934, propped up again in the 80s. The effect was simple. Sugar inside this country cost more than sugar anywhere else on earth, roughly twice the world price, year after year. The second thing, the government decided to grow corn, mountains of corn, subsidized, guaranteed, more every season than the country could eat. So the price of corn fell and kept falling on purpose. Now put those two facts next to each other, because the men who ran the food companies did. Expensive sugar, cheap corn. In 1970, they put a sweetener made of corn into the food supply, high-fructose corn syrup. By the early 80s, the big soda companies had pulled the sugar out of your Coke and your Pepsi and put the corn syrup in. They did not announce it. The label barely changed. The taste, they decided, was close enough that you would not walk away. It was 20 to 30% cheaper than sugar. That is the whole reason. Not your health, not the flavor, a cheaper input that did the same job. The decision was made on a cost sheet, and the cost sheet won the way it always wins. And once the sweet got cheap, they put it in everything. The soda, the bread, the crackers, the pasta sauce, the salad dressing, the yogurt that has a picture of fruit on it. They put it where you would never go looking for it because it was cheap, and it sold, and it covered the taste of food that had been built down to a price. You did not eat more candy. You ate in a country where everything, quietly, had been sweetened. You were drowning in it, and they sold you the water by the truckload because the water cost them almost nothing. That is the trick. They didn't make the candy more dangerous. They made everything else into candy and didn't tell you. Now the fat. Same machine, different decade. There is a process. You take a liquid oil, a cheap vegetable oil, and you force hydrogen through it, and it turns solid. It becomes a fat that does not exist in nature. They called it partially hydrogenated oil. You ate it as margarine, as shortening, as the thing that made the cracker crisp and the cookie last and the fried thing fry. Why did they use it? Say it with me. It was cheap, and it lasted. It did not go bad on the shelf. A fat that does not go bad is money. A product that lasts 90 days instead of 9 is money. So they put it in everything, the same way they put in sweet for the same reason, off the same kind of cost sheet. Here's the part you need to sit with. By the early 1990s, the studies were coming in. By the mid-2000s, there was no argument left among serious people. This fat, the cheap one, the one that lasted, raised the bad cholesterol and lowered the good. The World Health Organization put a number on a high trans fat diet. It raises your risk of dying, of anything, by about a third. Of anything, by a third. They knew. The science was sitting there for a decade, and more, while it was in your microwave popcorn and your frozen pizza and the birthday cake from the grocery store. Denmark banned it in 2003. A small country decided its people were worth more than the shelf life of a cracker. The United States got to it around 2018. 15 years. Count the cakes in 15 years. Count the mornings. When they finally pulled it out, the government's own estimate was that taking it out would prevent something like 20,000 heart attacks and 7,000 deaths a year. A year. Read that as an accusation, because that is what it is. If pulling it out saves 7,000 a year, then leaving it in costs 70,000 a year for every year they left it in. And they left it in for 40. Do the arithmetic of a generation that ate the cheap fats its whole life so that somebody else's product could sit on a shelf an extra month. Nobody went to jail. Nobody was even asked to. The shelf life of the cracker was protected by law longer than the lives of the people eating it. You want to know how they got away with it for so long? How nobody made them stop? It is because they bought the referee. In the 1960s, there was a question on the table. Was it the sugar that was killing American hearts, or was it the fat? It was a real question with real money on both sides of it. The sugar industry had a trade group. As early as 1954, the head of it stood up and said in so many words that if you could scare Americans away from fat, they would eat a third more sugar to make up for it. He called it a business opportunity. He said this out loud. It is in the documents. So the sugarmen went to Harvard. They paid 2 Harvard scientists. The money, in today's dollars, was around $50,000. They told the scientists what the review was supposed to conclude before it was written. They handed them the papers they wanted included. They read the drafts. And in 1967, those Harvard men published a review in the most respected medical journal in the country. And the review said, it's the fat. It's the cholesterol. The sugar is not the thing to worry about. They did not mention who paid for it. For 50 years, that was the science. That was the thing your doctor read. And your doctor's teacher read, and the government read. Built into the foundation of everything anyone told you about what to eat was a paper that had been ordered and paid for like a sandwich. We only know because a researcher went down into a basement in 2016 and found the letters and laid them on the table for everyone to see. And here's the line that should make your jaw set. One of those 2 paid Harvard men went on to help write the federal government's first official advice on what a citizen should eat. The referee they bought did not just call a game. He went on to write the rule book, which is how you get the pyramid. You remember it. It was on the classroom wall. It was on the side of the cereal box, which should have told you something right there. The cereal company was happy to print it. At the bottom, the wide part, the part you were told to eat the most of, bread, cereal, rice, pasta. 6 to 11 servings a day, grain, grain, grain. Now ask the one question they never wanted asked. Who drew it? The Department of Agriculture drew it. The USDA. And I want you to understand what that agency is for, because the name hides it. The Department of Agriculture exists to sell American crops, to promote them, to move the harvest. That is its job. That is the reason to exist. And that same agency was handed the job of telling you what to eat. The same office that wins when you buy more wheat is the office that told you to build your whole diet out of wheat. They did not have to be evil. They just had to be exactly what they were. A salesman was given the job of the doctor, and he did the job like a salesman. It is on the record. The rollout got held up after the meat and the dairy lobbies leaned on them. A woman who ran nutrition policy inside the USDA said afterward that the wording got changed to favor the processed and the packaged over the fresh, to keep the producers happy, and that the servings of grain got pushed up to keep the grain growers happy. And the people who actually knew, the real nutrition scientists, a man at Harvard among the first of them, said this is wrong. A pyramid built on honest science with vegetables at the base, not bread. They were ignored. Of course they were ignored. They didn't have a harvest to move. So a generation of children grew up looking at a wall chart that was, at the bottom, a marketing diagram for the surplus, and they followed it. They were good. They did what the chart said, and they got heavier and sicker and were told it was their fault, and they lacked the willpower, and they should have tried harder against the exact advice the government had pinned to the wall. I want to show you one last thing, and this one is happening right now, today, while we talk. Take a bag of brightly colored American candy, the kind with a rainbow on it. Read the colors, red 40, yellow 5, yellow 6, made from petroleum. Now take that same brand, the same candy, off a shelf in Europe. It is a different recipe, same company, same candy. In a lot of cases, they pulled the petroleum dyes out and used colors made from plants. Or they left the dye in, but were made to print a warning on the bag, a warning that says, this may affect activity and attention in children. Same company. They can make the clean version. They already make the clean version. They make it for the children over there. They just don't make it for yours. And it is not only the dye. There's a chemical they put in bread to make the dough rise faster and tougher. Banned in Europe since 1990. Banned across most of the world. Possibly carcinogen. Still legal here. The most our own government ever did was politely ask the bakers to stop, more than 30 years ago, and never make them. There's a white pigment they put in candy and sauces and frosting to make it whiter. Europe banned it in 2022 over worry it could damage DNA. Still legal here. You have to understand the difference in the two systems, because it is the difference in two ideas of what a person's worth. Over there, the rule is a company has to show a thing is safe before it goes in your mouth. Show me it's safe, then you may sell it. Here, the rule is the other way. A thing is treated as safe, and it stays in your food, and it keeps making somebody money until enough bodies stack up that somebody is finally forced to prove it is dangerous. Sell it first. We'll count the bodies later. One system makes the company carry the risk. The other system makes you carry it. Guess which one we got? Guess who built it that way? And guess who it was built to protect? And it was not you. So here is the table you were handed. The bread you can't pronounce. The sweet hidden in everything because the sweet got cheap. The fat that doesn't spoil and shortens your life instead. The science that was bought before you were born. The wall chart drawn by the men who had grain to sell. The candy that has a clean recipe they keep for other people's children. None of it was an accident, and none of it was a conspiracy. It was 1,000 small decisions, each one made the same way. What is the cheapest thing that will still sell? By people who already had theirs. People who own the shelf. People who set the table and then got up and left. That is the inheritance. Not the house, not the pension, not the things they say we'll get someday. The inheritance is the body you're living in. The one that was fed down to a price. The one that was the cheapest line on somebody else's cost sheet 60 years before you ever picked up a fork. You cannot go back and uneat it. I can't either. That part is done. But you can turn the package over. You can read the back of it. You can learn to see the cheap thing dressed up as a normal thing, because once you can see it, you can't stop seeing it. In the food and in everything else, they sold us the same way. Read the label. It is the most radical thing they left you able to do, and they left it to you by accident, because it was cheaper to print the truth in small letters than to take the poison out. So read the small letters. That's the whole inheritance, a list of ingredients, and the eyes to finally read it.